You need a certain small set of goals and what it means for your child to be successful morally and to not divert your attention from those goals.
What are 3 philosophically inspired parenting strategies?
Yeah, so this is actually something that's been really important to me because I'm a dad, so are you. My kids have more or less successfully made it through their childhoods. I've got one military guy, one school teacher, and one who's still in college. And the 3 things that I took from the ancients that were most important to me, number 1, it's also in running a company, don't freak out.
Okay.
Never freak out. If you freak out, everything will get worse and they will freak out. Everything will be bad. And by the way, there's never a good reason to freak out. Everything is a solution.
Okay.
So that's number 1. Number 2, don't be empathetic, be compassionate. Now this is a very stoic idea.
What's the difference?
Empathy is to feel somebody's pain. Compassion is to will the good of the other as other. Compassion is to love somebody and to do what it takes, even if it requires that you look at their pain at some remove. Parents who are really empathetic to their teenagers, but you should always be compassionate. The third is that you need a certain small set of goals and what it means for your child to be successful morally and to not divert your attention from those goals. So for example, you have a teenage kid who's bringing home C's and D's in school. You actually don't care about C's and D's, but you'll spend 90% of this family oxygen talking about the C's and D's. What you want is a child who's honest, who's compassionate, who loves other people. That's what you actually want. Pay 90% of your attention and time to the things that really matter most. And the feng shui of this should be, there's 3 of them. Figure out what the 3 are.
I was thinking that sort of at the root of all great parenting strategies, to me, what do they all have in common? To me, the core idea, this is more of a Buddhist than a Stoic idea, would be being present. Yeah. So even your point, freaking out. Why are you freaking out? Because you've extrapolated this to mean all these different things.
Right.
Why are you mad about their grades? Because you're thinking, well, if you don't pass 3rd grade, then you can't pass 4th grade, and then you'll end up under a bridge somewhere.
Right.
So much of what we miss as parents is because we're on our phones or.
Right.
So to me, I think at the core of it is presence.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's to be alive. But by the way, that's not just about parenting, that's about life. I mean, Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Vietnamese Buddhist master, said that when you're washing the dishes, you should wash the dishes. Because if you're not washing the dishes when you're washing the dishes, you'll not be fully alive. You won't be actually here. And when do you most want to be alive and here? It's with your children, because what matters most?
Right. It's like when you're going to be with your kids, be with your kids.
Yeah. Be fully alive with your kids, because otherwise you're nothing more than a simulacrum for a parent. You're a phantasm. You're a hologram.
What do you think of the Stoic exercise? Marcus Aurelius gets this from Epictetus, but he says, as you tuck your child in at night, say to yourself, they may not make it through the morning. So he's doing memento mori not for himself, but actually about his children, which tragically he does lose several children before adulthood, which was the way of the ancient world. What do you think the wisdom of that is?
It's the only way to conquer fear. And you can't be parenting with fear. The only way to conquer fear is to face fear, because that's the only thing that will inspire courage. You will not eradicate fear. You'll conquer it through courage. Now, this is an ancient idea of the memento mori from the Stoics and from the ancient world, indeed, in the West, but it's also the concept behind the Maranasati meditation of the Buddhists, who have a 9-part death meditations for themselves, but which can also be transposed into the death of another, or, by the way, for your own failure, for your own, when Marcus Aurelius talks about being forgotten, for example, what he's doing is he's exposing himself to the sensation of being forgotten. And that's what we should do, to expose ourselves to the concept of being irrelevant, to failing in any way. That's our death meditation. And if you're most afraid of the death of your children, really you're thinking about your own death, because that's the transposition of your greatest fear onto another. And you need to experience that to conquer it.
I think that makes sense. To me, the other part of it, it's not just, the Buddhist idea of attachment equals unhappiness. I also thought the point of that exercise is when you're putting your kids down to bed, actually be there putting them down to bed, right? Going like, hey, this could be the last time I do this, so I'm not going to rush through it to go watch Netflix.
So savor it.
Yes.
Yeah, so savor it. That's actually a good point. But I use that, by the way, I use that Maranasati meditation idea with my students who are, they're high achievers. They're really, you know what they're most afraid of? Failing, because they've never failed.
Sure.
They're great. They're smart. They're hardworking. They're highly meritorious. And so I'll say, I make them do a Maranasati meditation on their own failure. And the most poignant moment in the 9-part failure meditation, I make them contemplate the concept, the idea, and imagine their parents feeling sorry for them. It's heavy.
Yeah.
Because that's the people you want to make proud. I think my parents feel sorry for me. But think about it. Think about how that, it probably won't happen, but you can only conquer it by confronting it.
And I think part of what you get when you meditate on it is that you realize it's worse in your head than it would actually be in real life. So your parents feel sorry for you. Yeah. So you bombed on stage. Who actually cares? Like a comedian has to fail public speaking. You have to fail on stage a couple times to realize, oh, this thing that was so intimidating, overwhelming to me is actually just a thing like all other things.
And actually one of the points that Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius make that well, I mean, it's all been verified by modern social science. All the stuff that I'm doing as a scholar is just basically, hey, I have data that shows that once again Marcus Aurelius was right. I mean, it's pretty boring, but the one thing I find really interesting is that the fear of failure, the fear of almost any repudiation of ourselves, rejection, whatever it happens to be, is actually not a fear of that. It's a fear of our own feelings under those circumstances. People are afraid of how I'm going to feel about myself, how I'm going to feel about the world if I fail. And it's so weird that we'd be afraid of our feelings, but not of the actual failure itself, so much so that we would be, terrified into the point of actually not taking risk, of not actually being alive in a weird way.
Well, and the irony is you don't control whether you fail or not, but you do control what your feelings are about that failure. So you're actually being anxious or worried about the thing that you have the most control over in the future.
And yet most people don't. And the reason is because they treat failure, and they treat their feelings limbically. They treat their feelings as if there are things that happen to them. And again, if there's one thing we learn from the Stoics, it's that you can become what we call in modern social science metacognitive. You can move your feelings from the limbic system of your brain to your prefrontal cortex where you manage them. And the way that you do that is by examining yourself. So journaling, which of course Marcus Aurelius was doing.
That's what meditations is.
Oh, I know. And the most incredible thing to me is that when he talks about that everybody is forgotten, indeed he is forgotten for his military campaigns, for his great glorias. He's remembered for scribblings on pieces of paper that he didn't even intend to share.
Right, his accomplishments in life were so great. There's a literal 200-foot column of just those accomplishments, carved in marble, which nobody knows what it means. Right. We totally lost it. You can see it in Rome, but it's not an important thing. But what matters, what people are actually talking about, is the internal work he was doing on himself that he would have thought no one would ever see.
Absolutely. It's like you would think that these battles, these glorious battles against the Huns or the Visigoths or whatever he was fighting, these northern tribes, that this would be the whole thing. And it's actually his diary.
You don't just magically become great at parenting. It's a thing you get better at over time, one day at a time, one experience at a time. There's actually something the Stoics talk about. Seneca says try to find one thing a day, one quote, one story, one conversation, one video if you're thinking about what's available today. The point is, find one thing that makes you better at being a parent every single day and think about where you would end up if you could do that. That's what I'm trying to do as a parent of 2 young boys. But it's also what I try to do with Daily Dad. Every day I write one totally free email that goes out to thousands of people all over the world who are just like you, parents who are trying to get better at their most important job. And I'd love to have you join us. It's totally free, no spam, one email a day. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. And I hope you sign up at dailydad.com.